Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Michelle, welcome to Consulting Leaders for this very last interview of 2025.
What a pleasure. The apex of the year.
I'm sure this is what it's going to be. Michelle, let's jump straight into it. What pulled you towards emotional intelligence, self-leadership, and how did that evolve into MLChoate Inc., if I'm pronouncing it right, but I'm sure you're going to correct if that's not the case. What got you into that?
Yes. I worked in healthcare as an organization development professional for 15 years. And as an organization development person, we look at systems and the interaction of people within a system and the impacts of that on human performance. What I noticed in healthcare, where I started my professional career in OD and emotional intelligence, was that people react to the environment in unproductive ways and then blame the environment. And so leaders are constantly managing behaviors around drama and kind of self-diminishing behaviors. When I learned about emotional intelligence and became certified to coach it, I started helping people recognize that they have so much more power in any environment, that if they simply chose to take that power, they would have the chance to be more effective at impacting not only the outcomes that were important to them, but to the organization. And so organizations started to recognize the value and benefit of growing these qualities and skills as well. So when I transitioned out of healthcare into my own consulting firm, I was able to start to explore these concepts outside of healthcare. And now I work with government, both local and state, trades, engineering, higher education. It's been a really great consulting experience for me.
So tell me a bit more about what's the outcome of the problem that you're solving? Because we hear about EQ all over the place. I don't know if I'm very versed into it, but at least it interests me a lot. Because I think if you do have emotional intelligence, hard skills don't matter as much. It's always about 20% hard skills, 80% people. So emotional intelligence is for me critical, even if there is no bad or undermined line of work. But if you're emotionally intelligent in anything that you do, you'll do better. So tell us a bit more about what's the outcome of your coaching and consulting to get people to have better, higher emotional intelligence or develop it even.
Certainly. So the outcomes tend to be dependent on the inputs. And there are two areas that I notice organizations can really benefit from emotional intelligence coaching and consulting at the individual executive level, as well as at the team and organizational level. The first is when there's been a disconnect. A leader's been advanced through their own skill set, right? They've gotten good at doing tasks and have grown in the organization because they were good at tasks and trusted. And now they're in a position where all of those skills they had before are no longer strong enough or consistent enough or responsive enough to managing people rather than a task. And so the disconnect results in lower morale for their teams, retention issues, employee engagement, and productivity, because people are less likely to bring up issues or concerns. And so performance starts to drop. So helping a leader come back into that space where they know that they have the skills and abilities to do the work, they're different skills and abilities, and they're based in emotional intelligence, those qualities and characteristics. Without the emotional intelligence coaching, people often start to feel ineffective as a leader. They start to self-judge. I'm not good enough. And when they start to question themselves, their behaviors decrease even further, and you end up with this spiral of decreasing performance and outputs from both them and their team. So we try to bring that back up to the front of their awareness so that they can act upon that knowledge and skill set consistently. The other place where I see this work really beneficial is when an organization or a team or a leader is in a transitional space. They're moving to a new role, or a team is evolving or growing or changing, reforming, if you will, or the organization is undergoing a systemic change. They're adding services or resources, they're expanding consistently. An executive leadership team may realize that the systemic issues they're seeing are because the things that used to help the org work, including things like interpersonal relationships, are not as valuable suddenly. The pace of change that we're undergoing is so much more rapid than we used to in business. And so growing individual and organizational self-awareness is not only showing them that these changes are natural and normal and their responses to them are human and normal, but that self-awareness around this also includes recognizing that there's losses that they have to reconcile. They don't have the same skill sets that or the ability to influence. They have less power. Their knowledge may not be as valuable as it used to be, and their ability to influence has shifted in that complexity. And so in those two spaces, what we're trying to do is help people feel more and be more effective by recognizing their ability to influence and move people when there's complexity, as well as improve some very critical business outputs like risk management, employee engagement, retention, employee morale, psychological safety, which drives increased performance outputs. So in those spaces, EQ is really valuable.
You mentioned healthcare, government institution, leaders, people transitioning roles. Who is it that you help specifically? Like, is there a particular industry, niche, company size, role?
If you think about it, Guillaume, every industry right now depends on people to a degree. And so these skills, as you noted, are less about the task and more about the ability to move people. And so emotional intelligence is necessary and applicable in all industries where people exist. The industry is less specific than the willingness of an organization to recognize that the way that they've always done it isn't working anymore. You can set up amazing systems. If people don't feel safe to enact behavior change within those systems, they won't. They will resist. And so the emotional intelligence qualities help organizations recognize what keeps people from engaging in good change behavior and manage the risks inherent in those, like adoption of change, or willingness to learn new skills, or willingness to defer power or right or authority in service of a greater organizational good. So less industry specific, more about leadership and team behavior.
So then here is my first cheeky question.
Okay, cheeky, go away.
So for people listening, I always brief my guests saying that I might take some tangents and like ask some cheeky questions. And Michelle was enthusiastic about this. So that's why I'm mentioning it. I suspect, you tell me if I'm wrong, that the person you're helping is not always, if not often not, the person who is actually making the decision of hiring you. The person who might be problem aware that their leaders or their team needs training and coaching on emotional intelligence is not the one who is going to go through the training and coaching. The financial buyer might even be someone else, because you have the team leader that says, I need some training for my guys here. But then you have HR or L&D who is in charge of the budget, and they're like, cool, but that's not something that... So how do you, since you don't have a precise target, which makes sense, the product makes sense to me, how do you brand, market yourself to make sure that you educate people on what emotional intelligence can bring to them, make them problem aware, make them solution aware, make them, hey, if your team is struggling with XYZ, I might be able to help, and here is who you need to be to have involved in the decision making. How do you do all that?
It's a fair question. Emotional intelligence straight out feels and sounds squishy, touchy-feely. And so how to tie that to organizational business outcomes. And as a coach, I have a specific skill set that I lean on that involves deep questions, very active listening, and helping people envision a future that they know that they're capable of creating, if only If only our teams were more connected. If only my leaders were able to send our message more actively. If only there was better, blah, 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 right? So I use my capacity as a coach to engage people, not as potential clients, but as people. And that's been probably, as a consultant, one of the hardest parts of my work for me. I didn't go into this to be a marketing person. I didn't go into this to be a salesperson. I went in this to make a difference in workplaces in the world. And so I really guide my my marketing practices through those same philosophies that I would use with any client. The person in front of me is the most important person in that moment. And one thing that I have that I've learned to really maximize as a coach consultant in the networking spaces is that because I work in a fairly small silo, it's me. You're looking at the entire staff of MLChoate Inc. I can't.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure. I'll have you speak to our CEO in just a moment. Hi, I'm Michelle.
Hey, Michelle.
I don't understand always what an industry is experiencing. I understand what people experience. And so when I stand in front of someone, a group, a team, an industry group, like at a conference where I'm speaking at a conference, I recognize that I am not the expert in what they do. They are. And to engage people at their level of expertise and help them see they already know what the issues are. As a coach, I'm helping them see them in a new way, or helping them see what underpins the issues is simply applying the skills and knowledge I already have to their innate and industry skills and knowledge. And so I use them as a feedback system. That also gives me a sense of, when I find a potential client through a natural networking experience or a speaking engagement, I can go back out into the ether, into the universe, and do greater exploration in research, white papers. And I use research very actively, not just what does the internet say, but what do scholarly articles say and industry professionals say about the work that they do. I educate myself deeply, and then I come back with an even more expressed and deeper understanding of their need and position it in such a way that emotional intelligence helps solve their problems.
So it's very much about education. It's positioning yourself as the authority in the space so that people gravitating around you might be attracted and be like, oh, actually, that's something that I need.
Yes.
What has worked for you? So since I'm talking right now to the whole marketing department of Michelle's company.
You certainly are. And to the accounting department and
right.
the staff.
Unfortunately, I'm not as well versed in accounting as I am in marketing, which is why I'm probably going to focus the questions on marketing, but I'm sure there are some podcasts who would be interested.
No, it's totally fine.
So what has worked for you? I mean, that being said, right, you're running a business. So what has worked for you to get the right eyeballs of the right people in front of you and you in front of them? What has worked for you in terms of marketing to get the message out, on top of the researchers, I mean?
Yes. I rely heavily on referral. And so delivering an exceptional experience is critical. As you note, wearing multiple hats, one of the things I have to challenge myself on is to maintain the highest quality experience for every client I engage with, because they're my leads, they're my marketing tool. And that aspect of it is I'm going to do my most profound and meaningful work with you and for you. I'm not handing it off to anybody else. And what you get from me is real and authentic, and it's focused on you and the outcomes you drive. So that's the first kind of niche application I would consider marketing myself, is the referral process. On the broader scale, I'm a business person. I came into this fairly green 6 years ago as a consultant and coach. So I paid a lot of money for my elevator speech and my media, my social media and my website development, and I got coached to do this kind of work of salesmanship. And what it ends up coming down to most often is that the message is meaningful, the stories that I share are personal, and the outcomes are relevant to a variety of industries. And I can take those stories and tell them and show people that the work can make a difference, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's on a platform like a podcast, such as I'm gonna be speaking to people. If what I speak about is meaningful and they recognize that the impact that they want to have in their work and their world is going to be benefited by emotional intelligence, they're more likely to reach out to me. Industry conferences are really powerful, not necessarily only in my industry, but other industries. I spoke at a trades conference last year and have some incredible clients because of it, because they recognize they're very good at the work that they do, the what they do, but the how they do, they knew they could do that differently. I speak and sit on panels. I do virtual and training across the country, as well as go speak and keynote and panel speaking in industries across the country. It's just keeping this work relevant. There has been some buzz since the advent of AI that AI might be a way to integrate coaching and training into businesses. And I can tell you that it's a great tool. It's not the way you help people develop soft skill. And I use soft skill very carefully because this doesn't mean it's squishy. It's data-based and it's actionable, and it can be trained and developed, and it can make a difference in your business. So setting aside that sense that this is squishy stuff, it's helping people see the relevance, whatever environment I'm speaking in.
Amen to that.
Amen to
How
that.
do you? Yeah, I mean, there is nothing to add. I think starting with a good job is always the base, right?
Right.
I think 99% of the people I'm interviewing say that they rely on referral, because that's what we get reinforced to do as coaches and consultants, right? You do a good job, the client is happy, it's a small circle, it's high ticket, they're going to talk about you to other people they know. And if you did a good job, by the way, it's a double-edged sword, meaning if you don't do a good job, people will also talk about you, just not in the way that you want.
Yep.
So starting with a good job is like mandatory, and getting business from it is the natural byproduct of delivering a good product, I'd say.
Certainly.
I like the conferences aspect, obviously super strong.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, as a B2B coach or consultant, what you need is not much, but it's not easy. Simple but not easy. It's authority, it's trust, and it's the right conversation at the right time with the right people.
Yes.
Conferences help heavily in all of those, because if you speak, you're going to establish authority. If you speak and you do a good job and you showcase results and you help people, you're going to build trust. And then it's just about continuing with the conversations that are derived from this.
That's right.
Speaking of those conversations, Michelle, how do you move from an introduction, someone reaching out because they saw you at a conference, a speaking engagement? How do you move from that to, an actual sales conversation, an SOW, a letter of engagement, and like we rock and roll? What does sales motion look like in your world?
Well, I had a great mentor last year. I was at a transitional point in my business. I wasn't having as much joy in the work as I'd wanted to. When I decided to be self-employed, it was to do work that I love, that was meaningful. And I found myself doing about 40% client work and 60% marketing and administration. And I was like, I'm unhappy. So I talked to someone who does similar work to me, and I'm like, how do you maintain this balance? They've been doing it for 25 years. And they showed me that the pattern of engagement with potential clients is a really intentional process, just much as you just described, right? It's not just a one-off lucky. You have to meet the people in the right place, nurture the relationship until they're ready to make that commitment, and then work through the formal processes of scoping, contract, and then delivery. For me, it's the consistency. I have examples of, I can think of two right off the top of my head just in the last year, where I met someone at a conference and we had a deep mutual interest in making similar types of outcomes in our workplaces. And so I simply said, let's just meet like once a month. Let's see how things are going. How's your work going? What are you learning? What's different as you see your markets evolve? You educate me, and I'll just chat with you. Maybe I can offer you guidance, maybe not. And then a year later, I'm consulting with them on a project. And so it's investing in the long term. I think that's something that's important, because to your point, trust building doesn't happen once. Authority gets you so far, right? It gets you in the door, but that people can trust that you are going to be consistent in your delivery on what you say. And for me, and this really boils down to emotional intelligence as a sales tool, an authenticity about what you will and won't do. And that was a great learning for me as I started my own business. You know, the instinct is I'll just take everything. Sure. Can I do project management? Sure. Can I do this? Can I do that? Sure. I'll do anything. And that didn't help me get better at the work that was most meaningful to me. It splintered my time, my energy, and I don't need a menu of services. If I'm really focused on delivering certain outcomes, that's where I'm going to spend my energy. And so rather than do this across a lot of areas, and then, am I supposed to add people to do work that I have in my brain? That's not possible. So instead, I've invested in deepening my skills and abilities so that I can deliver even more effectively on what I'm capable of. Thus, trust goes up and I'm showing up authentically. People are going to know exactly what they're going to get from me. I'm direct. I'm a straight shooter. I'm there to consult and make their business better. I'm going to help point out the things that they're not always comfortable noticing or talking about in a way that's compassionate and demonstrates partnership. And that, I think, is so critical. And I think that's also kind of the, walk the talk kind of thing. I'm not an unemotionally intelligent, emotional intelligence consultant. I have to show people the value of it through my own actions.
Walk the talk is by far the best strategy to sell, in my opinion. It's just like, hey, I believe so much in my services, product, whatever, that I'm the number one user of it myself because it works. And I think you should make it work for you too.
Without exception, Gil.
So once you get through the door, Michelle, how do you keep on working with the clients? Because the way I imagine emotional intelligence, right? And we had a few like workshops when I was back at PwC as a consultant myself. And it's kind of a one-off, right? It's one training, it's one session, it's a 2 days workshop, whatever it is. How do you retain? How do you, once you sign a client and deliver a good job deliver good work so that they refer you to other people, how do you keep on working with them as well? Like, do you go to other teams? Do you go to other leaders? Do you go to like further down the food chain? How do you do this in your business?
Certainly. As we noted earlier, that authority and trust goes a long way. Then, as I say, I assure that I'm authentically who I am. The first trust building process is coming in and managing that initial intervention, training, coaching to the highest capacity I'm able to deliver, maintaining consistent connection with my client, who's not always the person I'm coaching or the team I'm working with. To your point, it might be an executive who hired me. It might be an HR organization or learning and development department who hired me. So while I'm working with an individual or team, I'm in communication, not in any way to violate the coaching relationship's trust. I never talk about what we talk about. Coaching is a very sacred space. But I do ask, what are you seeing? What's different? How is the organization responding to these changes in behavior? What are you noticing that describes that there is a change in the outcomes that you were hoping to see? What's better, what's different? So it's a very intentional feedback mechanism. So in that, I'm also, aside from building trust with the direct receiver of services, I'm working to build trust and authority with the purchaser of services, demonstrating that I have more capability and more insight into what's happening around them and not just on what I'm trying to do. And that has consistently translated into other opportunities. One example that happened last year, I was actually involved in this organization over a several year period. I was hired by a senior executive to do some work outside of HR's function. They're like, we like you. We want you to do this work for us. I had been speaking at a board event where they were a board member. Came in, did 6 months of work with their team, their leadership team around emotional intelligence and strategic planning, how EQ informs strategic planning. HR got wind of it and they're like, wait, who is this person and why are they working in our org? And so I sat down and just met them and told them what I did. And they said, well, we actually have something that's similar. Would you talk with this leader? So talk with this leader, and now I'm doing coaching for their whole team. This leader's had conflict with another leader and says, would you help me have a conversation with this other senior executive? So now I'm doing what's called a mediated conversation or a facilitated conversation between two leaders who've been struggling to communicate, which evolves into another training, which evolves into 2 more individual coachings because it's making a difference. And so the word of mouth starts to happen internal to the organization. Wait, you got to work with her? I want to work with her. Oh, I see what you're doing differently. Did you learn that from her? I want to learn how to do that too. And so the relational part of it becomes, for me, I start to feel like I have such ownership over the organizational outcomes that even if I don't, they consult with me on a project and end up not using me, I feel like I've informed the outcomes so that I really show as a partner in the work, not just somebody who gets paid to do the work. And I'm always willing to consult with those more tenured relationships without in any consideration of cost or charge. It's simply that I want to see them be successful and I want my work to live inside that organization. And I have several organizations where that pattern has come alive, where I start with one small group and it evolves because the work is making a difference. A guy last week, I'm doing coaching, emotional intelligence coaching for a group of 10, and then we're going to evolve it into a leadership development program that begins next month for 20 people. 10 have already done coaching, 10 are just finishing their coaching right now. And one guy walked in last week, and I'm meeting a lot of these people cold. I know of them, but they know me through some brief communications, and I'm walking in with very intimate information that describes insights into how they behave that even they themselves might not yet understand. And he opens the door and he's like, I'm so excited to see you. I'm so glad you're here. I've watched the changes that so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so have made it. I want to do that too. And so it becomes endemic, right? It becomes a part of an organizational behavior set that people want because they know it'll make a difference. And with that, I always feel, first of all, grateful that I'm trusted. Also, when I see the difference long-term, deeply, deeply satisfied that I'm helping people make a difference in their workplaces and ultimately in the world. I get excited. Sorry.
No, I love it. You're just giving me, so you're making my job a bit harder, Michelle, which is a good thing. So there are so many things I want to pick up on and follow up on. One of the thing is, I'm trying to reflect on what will be the most useful for the audience and for me. Yes, podcast is my secret to actually pick the brain of my guests. So do you do that? Do you do all this in person or remotely mainly?
That's a great question. Before I went out on my own, I was employed by one of the largest not-for-profit healthcare systems in the country remotely. And so I had already been exposed to a remote working environment. I had a team across 5 states. My corporate offices were all the way across the country. We were in person with very infrequently. So I was able to master before COVID a lot of the technology that benefited virtual environments, virtual work relationships. So that transition post-COVID was pretty straightforward for me. I do as much as possible in person when it's available. I do, for some of the work, I do feel like it's more meaningful to be with rather than just to talk at. A gentleman I was coaching yesterday had some resistance as I walked in. I could see it non-verbally. I could hear it in his tone. And by the end, he reached over and touched my arm because like we'd made a connection. He got it. He's like, yes, 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 and gave me one of these little pats. And I was like, okay, we couldn't have done that virtually. We wouldn't have had that dimension to expand upon the relationship, to build that trust that he could come to the point where he could feel enough connection with me to be vulnerable in that moment. Ideally, those opportunities are made available. When I work virtually, it's often simply an issue of distance and time. As much as possible, when I have clients across the country, I will go to them as much as possible because I think it's that important.
That's very interesting. I mean, you see where I'm coming from when asking this question. I have recorded about 500 episodes. 99% of them are remote, but every damn time when I do one in person or when I meet, I was in the US for 3 months, like in Q3, Q4 of 2025, and the power of being in person, especially when I wouldn't say I master it, but at least I'm sensible to it and emotional intelligence. When you're able to connect with people, be in the room, being able to read the room, being able to establish a physical connection, a very professional one, just to be very
of course, no HR violation.
I mean, you do whatever you want, but that's I wouldn't advise that. It's like so game changer. And I'm like,
Yeah.
since you evolve in the world of emotional intelligence, I see how you can provide knowledge, right? And probably training as well remotely. Like no
Sure.
problem with that. But
Sure.
like most of it will probably go through and much faster if you do it in person to actually demonstrate the very thing that you're talking about and training the people on.
Yes.
And back to the origin of that question, which was when you're physically present there, you can also look at the other teams. Like you work on site at the company, which for upsell and retention is like much easier as well.
Yes. Yes. When I get to see the environment, because, I started as an organization development professional. So the environment, context, infrastructure,
Mhm.
lighting, doors, I mean, the stuff that seems kind of peripheral to the work environment has deep impacts. There's some research out about, the shared workspaces, cubbies, and the impact that that's having on performance. Like that stuff matters. And so I have greater context when I'm able to be on site, to be with someone. And frankly, Guillaume, the other thing that I've learned is because the work I do can feel very vulnerable, if I'm in their space, they have more power. And so I can present as more humble, more present. They can feel more confident because it is their domain. And that gives me greater accessibility to them because they start out in the one up. And so all I'm doing in the conversation is bringing myself into balance with them instead of me being the power where they already feel perhaps anxious or concerned. And that may be a nuance to my work in particular. I think one thing about consulting, though, is people expect you to come in and be like, tell them what to do, which is a power imbalance straight from the start. And that doesn't move people organizationally, behaviorally. To be told what to do doesn't motivate. And I think that's an important quality as well.
Couldn't agree more. Let me throw a curveball at you here,
Okay.
Michelle. What's your biggest challenge? What's the
Mm,
thing that, if you crack, you're gonna get the business to the next level? If that's even the goal, right? Because sometimes people are just perfectly fine with where they are, and in this
yeah.
case, congratulations, you've won. Um, for you, what would that be? What's that number one challenge in your business right now?
Well, we talked a little bit at the beginning. You're looking at the entire staff of MLChoate Incorporated. So it's there's two things that I'm finding as a consultant that create challenges for me. And
Mhm.
I want to just kind of underpin this with I coach myself on managing emotionally for these challenges all day, every day. I have to. It's the application of what I do well to help me be a better business person. Because of what I do, I am the product. I have a finite amount of time I can deliver that product to clients. And so scale is hard for me on the coaching and consulting side of it. I have only so many hours in a week to deliver content, to prepare content, to do follow up on content. Oh, then I have to market and administer my organization. And so that's not work I can hand off to anybody. I'm learning by hiring. I've got someone that does some administrative work for me, including calendaring. I've got a bookkeeper. I've got somebody that is working on my marketing now. So I'm learning how to let things go, which as a solopreneur, can be very hard. The letting go of, because it's your product, right? And so you have so much buy-in to that. However, I've just opened a second company because why not, right? Why not? And that second company is a retreat company. I was able to run my first retreat, which is more of a deep dive. It's an endeavor that helps people have more intentional interventions that are longer in experience with a community of people that want the same outcome. I
Mhm.
can help them have that space with safety and comfort and connection to deepen their learning more quickly. Transformational experience is truly what we've delivered so far. And so the scaling of that means I'm going to be hiring a whole person where I've not done that before to run the administrative part of the business. And then I come in as a consultant and deliver content that of course I've built, and I built the whole program, but I'm not managing the
Mhm.
administrative portions of it. And that way I can manage my scale and scope more intentionally, which, starting out kind of like I have to do everything, and being able to delineate what's really mine in terms of scope is going to be a new learning for me. And I think those are the biggest challenges I'm facing right now. The retreats part of it, as a resource to specific audiences, is going to, I think, create as much potential for human impact as the coaching. It's just going to be more personal than it is professional.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll impact both sides, as they often will.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting. It's on one hand, it's splitting focus. On the other hand, it's potentially finding synergies between that new offer and the existing one. And if done properly, that can really, bear interesting fruits.
Yes.
So curious to know how you're gonna walk around this challenge.
Yeah.
Michelle, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
Oh, thank you for asking. Michelle Choate, MLChoate Incorporated. I have a website, Michelle Choate, MICHELLE, Choate.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm out there and active. My new company is Elate, Elevated Learning and Transformational Experiences. And that website goes live by the end of this month. We'll have continental U.S. offerings in 26, and we're looking to expand internationally in 27 to bring transformational experiences to individuals to deepen their learning and connections.
We'll put all the links in the description. What I can say for sure, Michelle, is that you've gained at least one LinkedIn connection out of this. Me, I just added you. Michelle, thank you so much for coming. No, avec plaisir. Thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders, Michelle.
Truly, truly an honor. Be well.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.